Hi, I'm Ron Tester. I'm a business coach and I'm here with Susan Pullen. Hello, Susan.
Hello.
And here we are talking about fear and perfectionism. So before we get started, Susan, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I help people to get through the inner blocks that they have on having success and ease in their business so they can really enjoy doing the work they love.
Excellent. And I am a business coach. I work with small business owners to help them grow their businesses while getting their time back. So, and Susan, you and I were talking about fear and perfectionism yesterday and how it really stops people. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I sometimes I tell people perfectionism can stop us from beginning something, it can stop us from continuing something, and it can stop us from finishing something. So it it kind of gets us at every point in the process. And there's at the root of it, I think there's a message that we get that we're valued for what we do and how we do it and not for who we are. So that's where the fear comes in, I think, because immediately when I go to do something or I think about doing something or I think about making it public, then there's that fear that I'm going to be judged, that I'm going to lose my worthiness and my belonging and my value.
Yeah. Boy, that's true for me. I know because of the way I was raised. My mom always said, "You're a perfectionist," you know. And I was, and I remember even as a kid, like I would draw something and I couldn't make it look on paper like that looked like in my mind, and I would get so mad and I would just tear it up and I would just there's hardly anything left from my childhood because I had that perfectionism, and part of it was just disappointment that I couldn't make what I wanted. But there is also that element of, if I drew this ugly horse and now, my sister's going to make fun of me or whatever. So there's definitely that element of fear and judgment there. What Where do you think it comes from?
I think that perfectionism, I think it does have roots in our culture, but the stickier place for us is in our family and in the culture of our family and the messages that we get in our family. And sometimes it's what you touched on of if I don't do it perfectly, if I'm not above reproach, then I'm going to get hurt in some way. I'm going to be criticized. I'm going to be judged, or worse. And sometimes it's messaging we get like, if you're not going to do it perfectly, don't bother doing it at all. And and unfortunately, that focus on having the perfect outcome or the perfect product or the perfect, visible, tangible result of our efforts, it undermines our capacity for practice and for being engaged in the process, which is actually how human beings improve, right? Um, there's a natural learning curve. We could talk about, right, the 4 stages of learning. There's unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know, and I'm usually happy enough with that. There's conscious incompetence. So now I'm painfully aware of what I don't know or what I feel like I'm not doing right.
Mm.
And then there's conscious competence. So I'm getting the hang of it. I can do it. I have to think about it. It takes some focus, but I can do it. And then there's unconscious competence, which we also call mastery, right? And that's where I don't really need to think about what I'm doing. It's kind of becomes second nature to me to do it well.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and that's the natural process of how we develop skill. But but with perfectionism, we have this idea, I should be, brilliant at this right out of the gate.
Mm. Mm. Do you think that that's worse now with social media? I do. I mean, I just when I see everybody, posting their perfect lives and their perfect things on social, and sometimes it's hard to remember, oh, they're years along in this process. They've already reached the third or the fourth stage. And I'm here at stage one or stage two, usually stage two, because then I'm feeling bad about myself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes think I should occasionally post like a blooper reel, of my my social media videos where I flub my words or I say something just utterly ridiculous comes out of my mouth or.
Yeah, you know what? We should do that.
Yeah.
We should. I really like that idea a lot. It's funny. I was doing a training recently with somebody who was super polished, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I just did a YouTube search for this person, and I found a video that they did 5 years ago, and it was very not polished. I mean, it was the lighting was bad, the sound was bad, the words were fine, but they weren't smooth. It was still good information. But I thought, that is so interesting because when I, am getting on YouTube for the first time and I'm showing up like this, the words, whatever, there's an opportunity there to give myself grace, but there's also that kind of societal pressure because I'm going to be compared with that person who's been doing it for 5 years and is already amazing at it. But we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And I think comparison can be one of the traps of perfectionism.
Mm,
you know, because because there is that tendency to look around to see, what does doing it right look like? What does
mhm.
doing it perfectly look like? What should I be doing?
Right.
And that it takes the focus away from, my uniqueness and my style and my voice and just my getting it out there in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah. For there's a saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And boy, that's true in my life when I see, because I might think, oh, I'm doing all right. And then I see, somebody who's doing it better, maybe having a bigger impact or whatever, reaching more people. I think, how I suck.
Yeah.
I turn into Eeyore because I'm like, oh boy. But then I remember my calling and I remember why I'm doing this in the first place. And even though other people are amazing, I am where I am and I need to show up and do what I need to do.
Yeah. One of the things I learned from my creativity coach trainer, Jill Badonsky, was to say to myself, I'm on my own path of magnificence and they're on theirs.
Mm. Ooh, that's really good. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And the fact that they're doing it is, gives however they're doing it is permission that I get to do it my way.
Hmm. Wow, I really like that a lot. So if we find ourselves dealing with fear related to perfectionism, whether it's our own inner critic or if it's society or if it's our family or whatever, what do we do? Like in the midst of this, I know that I should be doing X. I know that I want to show up. I want to be present or whatever. But if I can't show up perfectly, then I'm afraid. How do you manage that? What do you do?
Yeah, I think there are a few things that I've found helpful. I'm a recovering perfectionist too. Um, I think one of them is dismantling the family story, that belonging story, that story that we won't be accepted, that we won't have a place in the world if we're not doing it right or making it look good. I think so. Taking that apart. I think also reminding ourselves of that learning process and that practice is how we improve, right? It's how we develop skill, it's how we get more comfortable. I think also focusing on the little wins and the
Mm,
successes and the things that even if we didn't do it exactly the way we wanted to, still we did it. giving ourselves credit for that, because that's another piece of perfectionism is we tend to like focus in on, so what if I did these 100 things well? This one thing didn't come out exactly the way I wanted it to, and this is the thing that I'm spending all my time thinking about.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What else comes to your mind, Ron?
Um, well, I think for me the first big step is just to acknowledge them. Like when those thoughts of perfectionism come up, not to uh, sweep them under the rug or beat myself up. Just get over it, or right? Which honestly is a strategy that sometimes I've employed, and sometimes it works, but it doesn't make me feel good, right? So just acknowledging, okay, that I'm having these things, and then I think for me, setting realistic expectations, I think is very helpful. It's like, okay, what is a good outcome for me, right? This is not what the this guru or that sort of thing. It's not what's a good outcome for them. It's what's good for me. And I think that for all of us, there is a place of growth and showing up and presence, and this is who we are, and we're evolving, but we're coming from a place of acceptance rather than striving, right? There's that whole idea of the gap and the gain, right? Am I focused on the gap of where I'm not, I want to be here, but I'm actually here? Or am I focusing on the gain, the fact that I'm here, but I used to be here, right? And so I think that being able to acknowledge that and own that, I think can help to soften the blow of that perfectionism, right? Another thing that comes to mind is just remembering why I'm doing this. Why
Mm.
am I doing this? Why am I even trying to show up in the world? For me, it's not to become famous. It's really to serve. And so if I can come from a place of service and say, if I don't show up, even imperfectly or imperfectly, if you whatever, if I don't show up, then I'm not fulfilling my purpose, my reason for being, right? So I think that that's super important. And then practicing self-compassion, you know sometimes when I look at the video that I've made or listen to my voice and I'm like, oh Jesus, right? I mean, it's just like, but there's a place for just saying, that's me and that's okay. And to not be so hard on me, because if somebody else showed me a video or whatever, I'd be like, man, look at what you did. You showed up, you did the thing, right? But when I do it, then it's like, oh, it could have been better, it should have been better, right? Or the 48th take or something like that, because it's something that I'm just striving for perfection. But and I think there's a place for trying to put out your best foot forward, right? But in the end, practicing self-compassion, I think, is super important. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think even with trying to, working with our perfectionism and working with sort of softening around the edges of that, that's another place where, like you said, it's really easy to go to like, well, I'm not working with my perfectionism perfectly.
The sad
It's
truth.
so
The sad
sneaky.
truth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I did want to ask you one thing. As you know, I'm always learning. I'm always listening to books and that sort of thing. And I was listening to a training just yesterday, and the person was talking about mindset difficulties and how we get mental blocks and how they can really stop us from going forward. And this person's advice was, and I quote, "Get over it." And I thought, okay, all right. I mean, I know that is a thing out in the world. Just get it over it. But honestly, if it were that easy, get over it. It's like, well, I never thought about just getting over it. Sometimes it takes more than that, in my opinion, right? It feels like it does. So if somebody knows that they're struggling with fear and perfectionism, and they may even think, God, why can't I just get over this? What would you recommend for somebody as the next step?
Well, I think that first of all, going back to the family piece, I think a lot of times when we have those fears, or we have the attitudes, or we have the perfectionism approach that comes out of our family history, even just acknowledging that on some level, this is a way that I'm trying to belong in my family, that I'm trying to sort of follow the rules of my family,
Mm,
and having some compassion with ourselves, because love and wanting to be loved is a very powerful motivator. And so to say to someone, just get over it, it ignores the the stickiness, the power, the drive, the motivation, the intensity of that, when what we're doing or not doing is coming from a place of wanting to be loved, or in an unconscious way wanting to love or be like our family members.
mm,
So I think, first of all, acknowledging that love can be a factor in perfectionism and in fear, and giving ourselves some grace with that. And then there's, there's process that I take people through to go further with that. But even just acknowledging that at the outset of like, okay, I see that this is coming from love.
mm. Well, I really like that a lot. It's funny, um, as I've grown over time, and honestly, especially working with you one on one. Before we started working together, when I carried around like my mental like who I am was just this thing behind here.
Mm,
And like it was autonomous, and it did its own thing, and it had complete control, and all of this nonsense of like there was no anything else, and because I felt like this was isolated and autonomous, like when I couldn't get myself to do the thing, I would just be merciless to myself, and really not comprehending what's happening here. Why I know I should, do this or show up here or write this or say this, and yet I can't get myself to do it. And then working with you and kind of learning, some of the books and that sort of thing, it's like there's this whole world, right? There's my body that, will or will not do certain things regardless of what this says, right? And then there's my family, and then there's the family that I know and the family that I don't know, but it still has an impact on me. And I mean, we could get into all the epigenetics and all that, but even the people that I didn't know have an impact on me. And so to pretend otherwise is really a foolhardy thing to do, right? So to say, oh, and I think that realizing and seeing the complexity of some of those blocks, the difficulty. There's great explanatory power and understanding. It's not just here. It's not just this little thing, little autonomous thing being carried around in my meat sack. It's like this is my body is as much me as the thing behind here, right?
mm.
Anyway, and my family, it all matters. So I appreciate you saying that, because I do think it's important to realize that and just to be aware of that, and then to be aware that there are ways of addressing that, even the unconscious things, the hidden things. And when we make those clear and obvious, then we have an opportunity to really grow past them.
That's right. That's right. To be free to step into who we want to be, and not just repeating the attitudes and the beliefs and the emotions and everything of our family.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Good. All right. This feels like a good place to stop. Is there anything you want to add?
I think that feels good to me. Yeah. Thanks so much for the conversation, Ron.
Yeah, yeah, it's been good. So if you are interested in learning more, working with us to develop your coaching or healing practice, we invite you to go to holisticbizgrowth.com and check us out. We do have an upcoming program, the Authentic Offer Method, which helps you get clear on who you are, who your ideal clients are, what they want, and how you want to help them. to create an offer that makes sense, and then to be able to practice saying that out loud and get good at that. So if you'd like more information, go to our website, holisticbizgrowth.com. And if you'd like to reach out by email, you can email us hello@holisticbizgrowth.com. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Ron.